If you've been following me here on YouTube or over on our TikTok, then you've probably heard me say this over and over again, but we're playing every game on Game Pass using the Suprise Me feature. We're nowhere near hitting all 400 titles, but we have made a decent dent with our first 20 games. Now, some quick background on why I decided to take on this series in the first place. Over the last few years, I've slowly bottlenecked myself into only playing the handful of mainstream FPS games. And if you're an FPS fan, then you know how much of a struggle it's been in this genre. So I created this series to force myself to branch out and try all types of games, while also sharing my perspective and opinions with all of you, in hopes of finding everybody a new game or genre to try out and play. I had my girlfriend create us an Excel file to help keep track of everything along the way, and I'll have it linked down in the description for anyone who would like to try this series along with me. Oh, and a quick side note, I know a lot of you have been leaving suggestions of what I should play next over on TikTok, so whatever title gets the most comments or like on this video, I'll make sure to play that one next. So go ahead and leave a comment of which game I should try out, and it could be your favorite game on Game Pass or the worst game. It's up to you guys. But let's get back to the video. So the first title the Suprise Me feature gave us was Rage 2. But before we get into detail about this first title, we have to talk about our 1 to 10 rating system. So let's think of a 1 as completely broken, an unplayable game with nothing going for it. And then jumping up to a 5 is the baseline. It's a fun game that has good potential. Mostly everything works as intended. I was able to get some enjoyment out of it, and it also held my attention for at least some amount of time. And then a 10 is that rare gem that is a timeless work of art with endless fun. Now, if you want to know more about the rating system in detail, a more in-depth list going over all the numbers will be down in the description. And I also have a video pinned about it over on my TikTok. So now let's talk about our first game, Rage 2. Rage 2 is an open world FPS game with a big focus on driving. The game had top-notch opening cinematics that started hooking me on the story right away, but the story quickly faded off with plot holes and bad writing. So I tried focusing on gameplay. The controls were very smooth and everything was very fast-paced. Driving around was also exciting, but you do have to be careful. After just a few missions, things did start to feel a little repetitive, and this probably wasn't helped by just finishing the Halo Infinite campaign that does have some similarities to this campaign style. So with all this being said, Rage 2 fell perfectly at a 5 out of 10. And remember, with this rating system, anything around that 5 mark is definitely worth a try if it fits your taste. Now let's quickly get through some titles that fell below that 5 mark. So in general, these are titles I would not recommend playing, mainly due to them not being fun or kind of broken. So coming in with the lowest rating overall is Craftopia with a 2.4. It attempted to combine Minecraft with Breath of the Wild, which would be an amazing combination if it would have worked, but this game just doesn't feel good at all to play. It's glitchy, the controls are awful, and it just has no direction. Next was our most controversial rating on the series, Generation 0. After revising the rating scale, this title did end up with a 2.8 out of 10. This title just wasn't fun to me at all. The controls were bad, the open world was completely empty, and the AI wasn't too smart either. Now, a lot of people over on TikTok argued for this game, but at the same time, a lot of people argued against it. So maybe when we get enough of a following, I'll post a poll so everybody can vote and we can see the true rating of this game. Next up is Racing with Ryan. This is a cheap Mario Kart clone that just isn't nearly as fun as the real thing. I mean, the game does work and we don't have a lot of room to talk because the game is basically owned by an 11-year-old kid with 30 million subscribers. Yeah, baby, yeah! So this title ended up with a 3.9. And then our last lower ranked game of this go around is SkateBIRD. It's a charming game and a fun idea. It just couldn't hit that fun factor, mainly due to its clunky controls. So it did end up with a 3 out of 10. Next up are 3 games that seem to be okay and well made, but just didn't fit my style of gaming at all. First up, we got Cricket 2022. I've really never enjoyed realistic sports games, and I know absolutely nothing about cricket. I tried to give it a fair shot by going through the full tutorial and playing some games, but I really couldn't figure out what was going on. And then this game was also weirdly quiet and had almost no sound effects at all. The umpires would just silently make calls. So cricket ended up with a 4 out of 10. But if you do happen to be a cricket fan, I'm sure you would love playing this with your friends. These next 2 titles ended up with a 4.9 out of 10. One of them is Tropico VI, which is a city builder with a comical twist. You get to be the dictator and tell everybody what to do as you slowly grow your city. Nothing was really wrong with the game. I just kind of realized I was not a fan of city builders. And our other 4.9 out of 10 was GreedFall. It's an adventure role-playing game with a very cool setting. You're placed in a dying city in the golden era of exploration. The setup really got me interested, but man, I got so bored walking around talking to everyone. A lot of people over on TikTok said this isn't the best RPG to start with, but if you are an RPG veteran, it may be worth a shot. Now, the next 3 games come in at a 5 out of 10, so I liked all of them, but they just didn't hold my attention very long. First up is Slay the Spire. It's a solid deck building game mixed with a dungeon crawler. This was the first game that showed me that sometimes the platform you play on does make a difference. I would love this game on a mobile device, but it just didn't hit right over on console. Our next 5 out of 10 is Mech Warrior 5. I was really surprised this wasn't one of those cheap mobile mech games ported over to the console, but was actually a full-fledged title. If you're into shooters and want something feeling a little different, give this a try. It had pretty cool cutscenes, and the missions really didn't have any of those annoying invisible barriers. Next is Payday II. It's a shooter where you get to be the bad guy and rob whatever you want. It had a lot going for it with the intense soundtrack and interesting setting, but the controls on console were pretty bad and the missions were very repetitive. A lot of comments said this game has a big community on its PC version, so if you're wanting to try this game, I would suggest going with the PC version if that's an option for you. And this is going to bring us to our last 5 out of 10, Portal's Bridge Constructor. This game mixes in a lot of puzzle game elements with bridge building. Nothing is really wrong with the game. It's made really well and has a good sense of humor and all that, but it just wasn't all that fun to sit on the couch and play with a controller. So moving on up to the only 2 games that were rated 6 out of 10, we have 2 titles that are nothing alike, Anvil Vault Breaker and Golf with Friends. Anvil is a fast-paced, top-down shooter that really reminded me of Dead Ops Arcade from the Call of Duty series. The game says it's still in early access, but felt very well made. You get to pick different characters that all have different abilities and play styles, so it has a good potential of replayability, so definitely give this one a try. And then Golf with Friends was the only title not chosen by the Suprise Me feature. It's one of those party titles me and my friends like to keep in rotation, and it lets you play with up to 12 players with just one controller. This title showed me that sometimes it's more important to just have fun with your friends than worry about how well the game is made. So now moving a slight bump above those last 2 is Perfect Dark Zero at a 6.5 out of 10. This was a launch title for the 360 back in 2005, and it's crazy to see how far FPS games have come since then. This game was honestly so challenging and different than other FPS games from today that it actually made it very fun and interesting. If you're wanting to try a more retro-feeling game, then give the Perfect Dark series a try. A lot of gaming veterans say this is one of the classics from the Nintendo 64. So if you've never tried those early FPS titles and you want to appreciate what you have now, this is a great title to show you that. The next 3 titles all scored very close to each other, but are vastly different in game type. First up, we have Decenders with a 7 out of 10. This game is the perfect mix of difficulty, relaxation, and good music. This is one of the first games I've played in the series, and it's still installed on my Xbox just in case I want to chill for a bit. I might even consider this one of the hidden gems of Game Pass, and it also shows you how important the soundtrack is to the game. Next, we have our first turn-based strategy game, WarHammer 40k Battle Sectors. I usually shy away from these titles due to how confusing and hard they are to learn to play, but this game ended up being extremely easy to learn and intuitive, and it's set in the 40k universe, which is always super cool. It's also a lot cheaper than playing the tabletop version, so if you've been on the fence about getting into Warhammer, I think this is a great entry point into that community. Now to the best FPS game we played this go around, Wolfenstein II. It gets a 7.3 out of 10 for good reason. Graphics, voice acting, and setting are all great. I mean, look how perfect this game starts. You legit get to roll around in a wheelchair while gunning down Nazis. You can't ask for a cooler start to an FPS campaign, but the main reason it didn't score higher was because the aiming controls really started to bug me, and some of the story elements got really cheesy by 4 or 5 hours in. But I'm still very excited to land on more Wolfenstein titles in the future. Now it's time to reveal the best rated game so far with an 8.2 out of 10, and that's Forager. I got so addicted to this title the first time I played. I thought I'd only played for maybe 20 minutes max, and it had been well over an hour. It's basically less stressful 2D Minecraft. The art style is great, sound effects are perfect. There really isn't much wrong with the game besides not being able to play multiplayer. This game even made me start looking to buy a Nintendo Switch just to be able to play it everywhere, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to get one. So to wrap things up, we've played 20 games out of 400 with a total of 358 gigabytes downloaded, well over a day and a half straight played. And then if you want to look at the overall rating for this set of 20 games, it would get a score of 104 out of 200. So that means every game would average around a 5 out of 10. So we actually had a very decent start to the series. I was pretty worried going in that we would have to grind through a lot of really low ranked games, but we've hit a very good mix of titles using the Surprise Me feature. So a few things I've learned from this first set of 20. There's obviously a lot more games out there than just competitive first person shooters, and there's for sure a place and time to get in those single player games just to relax and chill. I also haven't really played anything outside these 20 games in over a month or so I am starting to miss playing with my friends. So even though we're pretty early into the series, I think the best thing to take away is always having a healthy mix of games. You got to have your competitive moments, but you've also got to have those relaxing solo games and a good mix of party games with your friends. And also, don't be afraid to try something new. I never would have thought in a million years I would have liked Forager, but I ended up loving that title. And especially if you're already paying for Game Pass, it's not like you have to pay anything extra to get the game. So thank you everyone for watching here and over on TikTok. Don't forget to place your vote in the comments below for which title I should play next, and I'll see you guys in the next one.